So today we're going to be talking about how to conduct a psychological experiment. First of all, many people still don't really know what a psychologist does. They think psychologists are mind readers or something like life coaches. In fact, psychology is a science and we use a scientific method, but instead of studying rocks or space, we study people. As a psychologist, you study people, and you study people to solve problems for them. The first thing you want to do is you want to start with a question you want to answer. You often hear psychologists say they're interested in something. It's a good idea to think of what interests you about people. Maybe you're wondering whether some exercise really makes people happy, or whether people perform better under a nice boss or a tough one. Psychology can help you answer these questions in a credible way. Once you've got a question worth investigating, it's time to do some research. If the question is interesting, there's probably already someone who studied something about it. So it's a good idea to see what the experts have to say about the subject. This is called background research, and where you look at all the scholarly articles or any of the material that has already been published on the topic that you're studying. Once you've read enough about the topic, you may find you have further questions about it. Take the question I had earlier about exercise. Say I study enough about that question to find that indeed exercise does make people happier, but I only have time to run 10 minutes a day. My question would then be, would running just 10 minutes a day make me happier? At this point, you want to start thinking about a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a prediction. So let's take the question I had about exercise. Based on my research, I believe that running 10 minutes a day will make people happier. I'm going to make a prediction that after running 10 minutes, participants of my study will rate themselves as being happier in some type of test that I'll give them. When designing an experiment, it's important to consider your variables. First, your dependent variable is the factor you want to isolate. Basically, this variable is dependent on other variables and can change. For this experiment, it would be the rating on a happiness test. I want to see if ratings will vary, in this case improve, but this depends on something else, the running. The independent variable will be running for 10 minutes. There could be many different independent variables that affect the dependent variable. Some examples are weight, gender, socioeconomic factors, anything that remains constant but has an effect on our dependent variable. Some of these other independent variables can act as confounding variables that interfere with my data. For example, let's say participants get higher ratings on my happiness test. It might be because they just love to be in psychological experiments, because who doesn't? Or all of them exercise already. So it's important to design research that controls for these things, making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate in my study by choosing people randomly, having another group that doesn't exercise but does everything else my exercise group does. These are all ways I can isolate my variables. Now let's say I run my experiment, do some statistical analysis, and find that subjects who ran 10 minutes a day rated themselves as being happier than those that didn't. Then that's awesome. I'll write it up and let other psychologists challenge me on it or further my research. Obviously, this was a simple demonstration of what a psychological experiment is, and in reality, it's a little bit more complicated than what I explained. But hopefully, this will have you get a better understanding of what psychological experiments are and how psychologists solve problems.